is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
Good evening. You're watching SMNI. Welcome to Business and Politics. I'm your host, Tantik Lingkang. Our discussion tonight is about the Philippine election system. That might seem odd to some given that the next polls is 2 years away, but preparations are already underway. For instance, the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, is planning an election summit in March. It was originally scheduled this January. Tonight, we'll talk to the national chairperson of the NAMFREL, Lito Averio Jr. NAMFREL, of course, is the National Citizens Movement for Free Elections, an organization that dates back to 1983. Mr. Averio is also a cybersecurity expert, and I hope to ask him about that as well. He's the president of the Philippine Computer Emergency Response Team, a consultant on applications and systems, business continuity, data privacy protection, and ICT policy development. I should also add that he writes a weekly column for the Manila Times on election reform and related topics. We will begin by asking Mr. Averio what is the state of Philippine elections today and what should be done to enhance it. Lito, thank you. Please.
Good evening.
Mr. Averio, if I may call you Lito, we've known each other for a while. Of course, call me Clink. Thank you for making time. I know we've been trying to schedule this for months.
Yes.
Some people might assume that NAMFREL's job was done in 2022, but really your work doesn't stop. I think I've been working on a plebiscite in Baliwag. I think you're also consulting BARM on the crafting on selection policy there, and of course, I think we will have special elections in Cavite to fill Justice Remulla's spot. But maybe before we get to that, on broad strokes, what are the concerns that NAMFREL has on our election system? How would you assess our election system?
Well, our general assessment of the 2022 elections, for example, while it was smooth, the operations was smooth, there were very little untoward incidents reported, very little election-related violence reported. We cannot characterize it as 100% okay.
Okay.
Simply because there were technology-related issues, like still there were machine breakdowns, and the SD card issues, for example, or the issues of transparency of the processes. So those are the lingering issues that have to be addressed.
Okay.
Lalo na especially when it comes to the machines, because it has impact on the voters. If a machine breaks down, then the voters are impacted.
All right, but that's the interesting point there, because please correct me if I'm wrong. What I understand is that the machines that were used in the last national elections have reached their legal lifespan, right? So I think the country needs to decide now on 2025 and 2028 what system to use. I would assume that law prohibits us from using the same machines because, as you said, they already broke down already. Also, and you could expect that to happen more because they're not getting younger, right?
Yeah. Well, there's no law prohibiting the use of the previous machines.
Okay.
That's all up to the commission.
So that's on the table.
Yes.
Okay.
However, considering the technological age of the machine, some parts of those are really worn out already, as we've seen. So that's an issue that will have to be addressed. Do we use the existing machines, since COMELEC has bought the machines already, used for 2016, 2019, then the 2022 elections. That's an issue. of whether they will set it aside or reuse the machines. If it's going to be reused, then they will have to be refurbished again.
Right.
Right? And there's no guarantee on the performance level of those machines.
Right.
In 2019, I think about 10% of the machines were new.
Okay.
Because they had to cover more clustered precincts than in 2019.
Okay.
2019, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 97,000, at least 97,000
Right.
clustered precincts, whereas in 2022 there were 106,000 at least
All right.
clustered precincts. So about 10% of those machines were new for 2022. Now, there's been an outcry also against the technology because of the problems that have been encountered. So up on the table is considering new technologies, other technologies that may be used for our elections.
Okay. Right. So what does the law say? Will that have to be piloted first, or COMELEC has the free hand to say let's go ahead and do it on a national scale? Or but you're a technology expert as well, right? I mean,
Right.
what's the sensible thing to do? If you do adopt, maybe a new system for 2025 and 2028.
Well, NAMFREL has been proposing, for example, setting up election standards, standards for elections, and defining really the type of an election system that we would like to use.
Okay.
So,
But isn't there one existing now, some sort of standard, or?
no, the current law, which is Republic Act 9369, provides for the minimum capabilities of the election technology to be used. Okay. Whereas it's different from setting up standards. For example, setting up standards on transparency. What kind of transparency do we need?
I see.
Standards on security.
Right.
Security solutions that we would like to put in the machine. And there are other sets of standards that we can apply on elections.
What about, people talked about in the last elections about social media and maybe particularly the negative influence of social media, trolling. Is that a big issue? Or I know we're a bit distance away from the last elections, so maybe looking at it from a purely rational point of view, is that a serious thing that we should be looking at?
It is serious matter to be looked into, because of misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation, especially on election time.
Okay.
Right. We are regarded as the petri dish, actually.
Okay.
On social media when it comes to elections.
Okay. When you say we, who are we talking about? The Philippines? Okay.
The Philippines, because it's where test for the social media influence on elections was done in 2016.
Okay.
And that spilled over to the U.S. elections, the U.S. presidential elections, especially the last one 2 years ago.
Right.
Okay.
The January 6th attack.
Yes. So it is really an issue, and it's really a growing concern. Social media influence, in particular the misinformation that.
And now recently, Brazil had something similar, right?
Right.
Do you see that? What's the likelihood of that happening in the Philippines, you think? I mean, you've been working with election reform, for a long time. I mean, is that something that Filipinos are vulnerable to, you think?
It's an issue that arose only in the last decade.
Okay.
Right? It's technology related because a lot more people now have access to social media via the internet, right? So plus anybody can spread word on social media.
Yeah.
Right? Even just snippets of information, good information, bad information, but people do not read through. They do not do their research. Not unlike in traditional media, newspapers, or radio and TV. Journalists do their research first before they present an issue to the public. Okay? Whereas in social media, anybody can claim.
Top of mind, you can say whatever you want, and no filters.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of dangerous because then a lot of more people would tend to believe, especially negative news. Negative news really spreads faster than good news, right?
What about the traditional problems we had with elections? The voter intimidation, vote buying. Are those still problems in the Philippines based on the past few elections you've seen? I mean, even the ones that are happening on the local level, like
there's still instances of election-related violence, you know, in the past elections since we automated the elections in 2010. Okay, but in 2010, for example, there was I think in Batangas, Taysan, Batangas, where an election worker died because the school was burned down. And there are traditional areas that we consider as traditional hotspots when it comes to the elections.
Okay.
So we, at NAMFREL, we really watch out for those. You know? But it had the election-related violence instances have gone down statistically.
Yeah.
Okay? So there are fewer election-related violence reported, for example, in the 2022 elections.
You're working also with the BARM officials on crafting their election policies, right? Is that still a hotspot? I know Mindanao, many areas of Mindanao were hotspots before. What are your observations there? Any encouraging things happening, or still the same?
Right now, it's pretty peaceful there. Right?
Okay.
NAMFREL sent an election expert mission during the Maguindanao plebiscite. This was dividing the province of Mindanao into two.
Okay.
Right. So this was in November, and there was, from what I compared, because I also go to Mindanao,
right,
outside of the elections, there's less tension, right, in the atmosphere.
That's good, right?
Which is good.
Right.
Now, the success, I think, of the BARM hinges on them being able to move forward. Let's say, for example, in crafting their election laws. You know, they are in the process of crafting the BARM electoral code as well as the local government code. So it all hinges in that. So again, it depends. There's a mix, kasi there's a different mix of
what are the challenges and what is at stake if you don't get it right?
Well, they just really have to get it right, you know, to keep the peace in that region, right? Of course, there are a lot of challenges then because the parliament, you'll have a mix of BARM, if we understand it, is a mix really of different cultural tribes. Okay, you have the Maguindanaos, you have the Tausugs, you have the, you know, there's this whole mix.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's socially there's a different behavior between the mainland Mindanaoans like Maguindanao and Lanao del Sur, for example, vis-a-vis the island provinces covered by BARM. This is Basilan, Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi. So socially they are very, very, very diverse. So you have to put them in one.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
So, but you know, very quickly before we go on break, are you optimistic that they will get it right, or are you you're still waiting to see?
Well, with a lot of support getting into the BARM area, I think they will get it right eventually.
Okay, good. So we'll have to get back to that. We'll take a quick break with Mr. Lito Averio of NAMFREL.
From the troubles and burdens of life. Find peace and break free from the shackles of sin and deception. Listen to the Almighty Father as He speaks through His appointed Son.
That's why this ministry is very relevant. This is the only way. The only way is repentance and obedience to do the Father's will no matter what.
Be there and be blessed as the entire world once again witnesses one of the largest gatherings of sons and daughters, imbibed with a new heart, mind, and spirit, totally freed from spiritual bondage that has enslaved many. Join the appointed Son of God, Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy, as he returns to the Philippine capital after 3 years for a special live global Thanksgiving and worship presentation to be held at the Inares Convention Center in Antipolo City, Philippines on February 19, Sunday at 1 p.m., Philippine Time. For inquiries, you may contact Brother Hajiman at 0926-004-8977, Brother Silvano at 0967-986-4196, and Brother June at 0977-219-6391. For more information, connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Email us on info@kingdomofjesuschrist.org or visit us on www.apollokibloy.com, www.kingdomofjesuschrist.org, and www.smni.com. Come and be blessed as you listen to the Appointed Son preach the only message that saves. Admission is free.
Welcome back to Business and Politics. We're talking to Mr. Lito Averio, chairperson of NAMFREL. Sir, talking about elections, we can't, not discuss the postponement of the barangay and SK elections. As of this taping, the Supreme Court has yet to come out with its ruling. But what are your concerns? Was it right to challenge it in the Supreme Court? And what are you hoping for the Supreme Court to do?
I think it's right to challenge it at the court. No?
Okay.
The petition from requiring that the COMELEC set the barangay elections earlier. Our own research, for example, indicates that it's under the Constitution that Congress has the right to set the term limits of the barangay officials. Okay, but nothing in the Constitution says that they can set the date of the elections. So, and there have been several postponements.
Yeah,
so
5 or 6 times, I believe, several times, right?
Several times. And that's one of the questions at the court when we listen to the oral arguments. Why the question of one of the justices why it was raised only now.
Why challenge now?
Yeah, why challenge now? So when should we challenge it? It's an opportune time as well. Okay, so that we end this cycle of keeping on postponing the barangay elections. The effect there is. The barangay officials, the current barangay officials have been serving for a long time, and I think the citizens have the right to choose their own leaders. Good if the barangay officials are performing, but what about those that are not performing, right? So I think the citizens have the right to choose new leaders. It also goes along with Sangguniang Kabataan elections. So the incumbents are now over age, I guess, to continue as SK. And because of that as well, there's a number, I think it numbers to at least 10,000, for example, barangays without SK. So because the incumbents have graduated, so to speak, from their position. So there are vacant seats in the SK now in so many barangays. So that's the issue there.
Yeah.
Term limits, performance, okay, as well as qualifications.
Yeah, but what have you heard? I mean, why is the Supreme Court taking so long? Because effectively now it's postponed, right?
Right.
But because it is hanging, the decision is hanging, we don't know when the election will be. Although I think the intent of the lawmakers was to postpone it, I think, to October or November of this year.
October of 2023.
Right.
I cannot second guess.
Right, that's hard to. Yeah,
it's hard.
Of course, yeah.
So we don't know what the considerations are. Okay, but we're of course hoping that the court will act soon on the petition. One of the dates we're looking at is, of course, October 2023. That's because that's in the law. The law postponing the barangay elections.
I see. Okay.
But of course, it would. The other date that is being considered is May 2023. Okay, because the petition by Attorney Macalintal asks the court to get COMELEC to schedule it sooner rather than later.
And since they're taking their time, I guess, to get the decision right? What would be your best case scenario from NAMFREL's viewpoint. What would you like to hear? Would you like for the Supreme Court to categorically say these are the dates, right, and these are the rules for rescheduling or postponing elections? What would be the ideal message that that NAMFRA would like to hear from the Supreme Court?
Well, if we base it on the provisions
Now,
of the
beyond
Constitution,
saying no, you cannot, you cannot postpone, right? But to prevent similar things from happening in the future, what would clarify all the ambiguity, I think, about elections?
it's, from NAMFRA's point of view, right? We have to have the elections. We have to ensure regularity of the elections, predictability of the elections. That's one. So setting it, I think the court, and I'm not a constitutionalist, much less I'm not a lawyer, right? An election lawyer. But people have the right to regular, predictable elections, and that's one of our commitments under the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, which was ratified by the Philippines back in 1986, I think, right? So that's part of the conditions there, right? So what we'd like to see is a more permanent schedule of the barangay elections, similar to the national and local elections.
Well, how serious is the problem? I mean, I know in one editorial, for instance, we were saying that there's an issue of legitimacy of the people in the office now because they have been extended for many years. But does that legitimacy issue create other problems on the ground as to law and order, or people not recognizing the barangay officials? The SK officials are probably not eligible anymore to be holding the position. Is that a concern? Is that an overblown issue?
No, well, we've not seen anything untoward challenging the incumbent officials, except that the people, of course, expect them to perform.
Okay.
Right? The issue of legitimacy, again, is an issue that somebody else maybe can raise. No?
Okay.
The experts, the election experts can raise. But certainly, I think, even on the ground, we've not seen anything.
So it's more important to you just to follow the law. The law says have elections, and therefore we should. That's your bottom line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Regular, predictable elections.
Right. Now, circling back to some of NAMFRA's concerns, right, and election reforms. One of the issues that we've heard about is the election list. And you know more than I do. But what is the issue there of not being able to clean up the list of voters and purge it from voters who've died or who've maybe migrated to another country or whatnot? Well, what's the issue there?
Well, every election, for example, we hear of instances where the name of a dead voter has been used.
Yes.
Somebody exercised the right to vote under that name. So that's one issue.
And of course, because every election there are more people that there are bigger and bigger lists of dead people on the voters list. Is that right?
Of course.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge because the commission cannot just simply remove a name from the roster of voters. Right? They have to have basis. Right? So unless somebody brings it up to court, for example, then somebody challenges it. Then that's the only time, and if the court so decides that they can remove a name from the list. But I know that there's been a lot of coordination, for example, with the local civil registrars, as well as the Philippine Statistics Authority, to look into this matter of deceased voters, right? And that's one of the reforms that I think the commission is looking into, right? To get those voters lists cleansed. The other one, the other issue is, of course, padded voters lists because, for example, in between elections, there are people who
is this the
move in
dagdag bawas?
Not the dagdag bawas, but people moving in and out of particular jurisdictions.
I see. All right.
So
I understand.
the
So there's
barangay officials, for
double
example,
listing.
it's possible.
Yeah.
So the barangay officials would encourage this, almost transient residents to register. Okay. But as far as I know, the commission also has a capability naman to cleanse the voters list by using our biometrics. They collect our biometrics information, in particular our fingerprints, to match the voters list so that they can cleanse it with the rid of duplicates. So there's a process there. It's very technical because it's processing fingerprint.
Yeah, but
information.
I know we were talking about a voter's ID a long time ago, and I don't know what happened to that now. There's, of course, national ID. I don't know. Maybe you can update us. Is the national ID going to be the new
As far as I
system
know,
used?
the commission had stopped issuing COMELEC IDs.
Okay.
Okay. And there's, I think, a conscious decision to adopt the Philippine National ID as a form of identity, document. So there are talks again on whether they can share information between the Commission and the Philippine Statistics Authority, and share and exchange information about or the data of the citizens, right? Or whether the COMELEC can use, for example, the biometrics information collected by the PSA,
Right.
and vice versa,
Right.
To cleanse the voters list.
As a tech guy, this must be very frustrating for you because, there's simple solutions to this. Lito will be right back. We just have to take another quick break. This is Business and Politics. We're talking to Mr. Averio of NAFRA.
Someone's in trouble.
I'm calling Kingdom Force.
You better get your tails up there fast.
Narito na sila. Let's burn. Ang mga bagong superhero. Sina Norvin, Delilah, Jabari, DJ, at si Luca.
Come on, Kingdom Force. I know you're gonna rescue us.
Team, we need Alpha Mech. Kingdom Force, unite! Kingdom Force!
Look! Kingdom Force!
Okay, team, let's do this! Our 5 mighty animal heroes kasama ang kanilang mga super cool vehicle na kayang mag-combine para maging isang powerful giant robot.
Together now!
Samahan sila tuwing Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 5:30 ng hapon at alas 10:30 ng umaga tuwing Sabado. Now that's teamwork. Kingdom Force!
Free yourself from the troubles and burdens of life. Find peace and break free from the shackles of sin and deception. Listen to the Almighty Father as He speaks through His appointed Son.
That's why this ministry is very relevant. This is the only way. The only way is repentance and obedience to do the Father's will no matter what.
Be there and be blessed as the entire world once again witnesses one of the largest gatherings of sons and daughters, imbibed with a new heart, mind, and spirit, totally freed from spiritual bondage that has enslaved many. Join the appointed Son of God, Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy, as he returns to the Philippine capital after 3 years for a special live global Thanksgiving and worship presentation to be held at the Inares Convention Center in Antipolo City, Philippines on February 19, Sunday at 1 p.m. Philippine time. For inquiries, you may contact Brother Hajiman at 0926-004-8977, Brother Silvano at 0967-986-4196, and Brother June at 0977-219-6391. For more information, connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Email us on info@kingdomofjesuschrist.org or visit us on www.apollokibloy.com, www.kingdomofjesuschrist.org, and www.smni.com. Come and be blessed as you listen to the Appointed Son preach the only message that saves. Admission is free.
Welcome back to Business and Politics. We're talking to Mr. Averio of NAMFREL. Sir, one of the major advocacies of your organization is election transparency. And
Right.
I think under that umbrella, you guys and our friends, now Commissioner
Commissioner Celis.
Celes, and of course our friend Gus Lagman, have been pushing hybrid elections. First, maybe I know there's been a lot of discussions. I think COMELEC, we were talking earlier, has been doing FGDs. Maybe with regard to transparency, what are some of the ideas being talked about, and then maybe how does that fit into your campaign before to have more transparency by having hybrid elections?
Well, let me describe transparency, or the process of how we achieve transparency in the elections. Before automation, okay, during the count, when at the precinct level, when the teachers start counting, okay, there is what we call the rules on appreciating the ballot. That's a provision in the Omnibus Election Code, or Batas Pambansa Bilang 881. It's there. Okay. Right? So it's a set of guidelines on how to appreciate a ballot. So observers and watchers like NAMFREL, for example, during that counting process, are able to see each ballot and how they are read by the Board of Election Inspectors. Okay, we saw how the votes were recorded on the tally board. This is the large board that everybody within the precinct can see, and the tally sheet. The tally sheet is the one that is being worked on on the desk by a member of the Board of Election Inspectors. After the last ballot has been read, we saw how the votes were counted, both based on the tally board and the tally sheet. So if they tallied, then that's okay, right? And we also saw the process of how the election returns, what is called the election returns, is prepared, and these is signed. The election returns are signed by the members of the election, the Board of Election Inspectors, as well as the watchers. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we also were able to monitor and see how these election returns were transported and conveyed from the precinct to the Board of Canvassers at the city or municipal counting center. Okay, that was a very transparent process.
Okay,
but we all know and we all experience that there were delays, because then, a particular party, for example, would contest how their particular name was read. So all those nuances and dynamics would go on. That's why the counting of the votes at the precinct level would take anywhere between 5 to 12 hours.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. Now came automation. Once the polls are closed and the machines were made to count the votes, it's just a matter of seconds. Mm-hmm. And the machines are able to generate and print out the election returns.
Right.
Okay. So that whole process, that whole manual process of being able to observe and see how the ballot is read, how it is recorded, how it is counted, were all taken over by the machine. So we don't see that anymore.
Okay.
Okay. And that is actually at the heart of the discussions on about coming up with a hybrid election system. Okay.
Is it correct to say that you've sacrificed somewhat the transparency for the sake of speed? Is that the issue?
Yes, that's the issue. And Mr. Lagman would like to put it this way. It's like, you were watching the basketball game. Mm-hmm. Both teams would get to shoot their balls on their respective courts.
Baskets,
okay. But the scores are not recorded. But at the end of the game, then suddenly the final scores are flashed.
Okay.
That's how he always puts
it. That's an analogy, right? All right.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing that we lost, that transparency of the count. Okay. Now, the idea of the hybrid election system is, again, bringing back that level of transparency. going back and saying that we would like to do a manual count of the votes
At the precinct
level, and then at the end of the count, then this will be electronically encoded and transmitted to the board of canvassers.
Okay.
Okay.
So you do that because all of the poll watchers, all of the election officials are at the precinct anyway.
Yes.
So that's where the transparency comes in, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's hardly any cheating there. There's
Because there's so many people watching.
So
yeah.
yes, you will not get out of there alive if you cheat.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, but since the first time that the hybrid election system was put forward to today, that's about a space of about 6 years already, or even 9 years. Okay. Of course, that idea of more transparency has already changed or morphed into another model, because there were other considerations now.
Okay.
The machine is able, the machine that we used in our previous elections is able to print out what we call the voter verified paper audit trail.
Okay. You mean 2022, right?
Well, from 2016, 2019, and 2022.
Okay.
But in 2022, they added what is called the QR code.
Okay.
Encoded in there is the results of the candidates that a voter selected.
Okay.
And that is the QR code is machine readable.
Okay.
So that's one version. One version says use the VVPAT to do the count.
Okay.
So that it's faster.
Okay.
Okay. You can display the, colloquially we called it the recibo.
Right.
So that everybody can see it if it's displayed on the wall.
I mean, all of the election watchers?
Yes.
Okay.
Because you'll see in there, in that recibo, the names of the candidates that you selected. And encoded in the QR code are those names.
Okay.
Right? So everybody can see that. And once we read the QR code, the count is reflected. And the count also would be transparent.
Okay.
So that's one version. The other version now is, which is the latest version that NAMFREL is considering on promoting, is what we call now, or similar to what is called the ballot making device.
Okay.
Okay. So instead of you writing down the names of the candidates of your choice, you select it via touch screen, for example.
Okay.
Okay. And once you're done with the selections at the end, before the ballot is printed, it will verify and ask you to confirm whether those selections are correct. Okay. Once you confirm that your selections, then it would print.
Okay.
And then that piece of paper you drop into a ballot box.
Okay.
Okay. At the end of the day, at the end of the voting, then we go into counting.
Okay.
Again, that ballot is machine readable.
Okay.
Okay. And we can base the count on that machine readable ballot.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
So
what would be the implications there on operations-wise? Because I think also the speed of the last presidential elections, I would think also works against, suggestions to improve it, because we've never had, election results that quickly. Right? But then again, it's a bit unusual because we've never had, I think, a majority president as we had. So that I would suppose that would make it easier, right? But in a contested election, well, that is where we'll see.
yeah, especially if there's the thin margin.
Thin margins, right, among candidates, right?
Right. So it will be a lot more challenging. But then that idea is really bringing back transparency to at the precinct level. Impact in terms of time and motion, I guess it will be a little longer than how the machine counts it, because the machine counts it sub-seconds and come out with the result. Whereas if we are to scan the ballot one by one, then it probably would take a few hours.
Okay.
To complete the count. But then you're ensured that everybody sees the vote, everybody sees the count.
Okay.
So maybe a 2 or 3 hour counting based on the printed ballots, and then that would probably suffice.
Right. I think when we were talking about this years ago with Gus and others, you guys were saying that this was the trend in other countries. I think Germany was one country that was mentioned that got rid of their voting machines in favor of more transparency. The NAMFREL suggestion, is that something that you're seeing also being practiced in other countries? Is that the trend now? Is there a model that you guys were looking at? That's why you suggested this?
Well, that's a trend in other countries, and a few states in the U.S., for example, they had reverted to the count discarded the machine. The German court declared it unconstitutional. The machines, it's not against automating the elections per se, but it declared that the machines used were unconstitutional because, again, you don't see how the votes are counted. I think that's the core issue there. The second core issue there is that the father and son tandem that raised it to the court was able to prove that the machines are hackable. Okay, so there's still that same issues are still being raised here, security-wise, that the machines are hackable. Right?
Okay.
Which incidentally, again, there was an issue, the leak before the elections in 2022. And the National Privacy Commission had recently come up with a pronouncement that there was no violation of privacy, in that leak. Okay. But there are other technical issues, like, for example, there are parties that question the speed of the transmission of the results, saying that within the first hour, there were already 20 million votes that were counted. Looking at the trend of the transmissions, they were within that cycle. In fact, the 2022 elections was a tad slower than the 2019 transmissions.
Oh, slower still. Okay.
Yeah. So, and that's despite the change in technology, right? So there were issues there, that has to be clarified. Why one has to be able to explain the flow of the transmission. That's why we've been asking for access to logs, for example, the telco logs, so that we can show that the transmissions were indeed, performed as we saw them in 2022.
Okay. All right. I think we'll press you on that a bit, and we'll just have to take a quick break. This is Business of Politics on SMNI. We're talking to Mr. Lito Averio of NAMFREL.
From the troubles and burdens of life. Find peace and break free from the shackles of sin and deception. Listen to the Almighty Father as He speaks through His appointed Son.
That's why this ministry is very relevant. This is the only way. The only way is repentance and obedience to do the Father's will no matter what.
Be there and be blessed as the entire world once again witnesses one of the largest gatherings of sons and daughters, imbibed with a new heart, mind, and spirit, totally freed from spiritual bondage that has enslaved many. Join the appointed Son of God, Pastor Apollo C. Quiboloy, as he returns to the Philippine capital after 3 years for a special live global Thanksgiving and worship presentation to be held at the Inares Convention Center in Antipolo City, Philippines on February 19, Sunday at 1 p.m. Philippine time. For inquiries, you may contact Brother Hajiman at 0926-004-8977, Brother Silvano at 0967-986-4196, and Brother June at 0977-219-6391. For more information, connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Email us at info@kingdomofjesuschrist.org or visit us on www.apolloquiboloy.com, www.kingdomofjesuschrist.org, and www.smni.com. Come and be blessed as you listen to the appointed Son preach the only message that saves. Admission is free.
back to Business and Politics. We're talking to Mr. Lito Averio of NAFRA. Sir, you're talking about this problem. Does that relate in any way to the outcome that we saw, or what other issues are you concerned about it?
Well, we have access to what is called the transparency server. So we get the election results via the transparency server. And in that operations, we did not see any questionable.
Okay. So that's clear. The results are okay.
Yeah. However, because of these issues being raised with regards to the speed and the accuracy or integrity of the count, we have always asked the Commission for access to the logs. Okay. So what are the logs? Okay. In the voting machine, for example, there is a record there of every event that happens. So if a member of the electoral board, it's called now the electoral board, intervenes in the process, at specific points, for example, closing down the polls or starting the count and printing of the ballots. Each of those events are recorded. Okay. As a machine reads a ballot, it accepts a ballot, that event is also recorded.
Okay.
Those records are kept in what we call a log. Okay. It's like a logbook.
Right. So what are you looking for? I mean...
and then, of course, when it goes to the canvassing system has the log. Transmissions, the telcos have also logs. Okay. So we said, if this is being questioned, this is being doubted, we would like to have access to those logs.
So just transparency.
Yes, so that we can tie them together. The transmission from what happened in the machine, did these events occur in the machine, and then, of course, what happens during the transmission where it went through, and then, of course, the target destinations like the canvassing servers at the city or municipal level, as well as the central server of the Commission and the transparency server. So we should be able to put together that whole string of events between the precinct all the way down to the transparency server or central server, and when the results are published by the Commission in the website.
What's the issue? I mean, is there something needed in the law to give you that access, or is it just a matter of implementing the law? What's the problem?
It's in the interpretation of what transparency means.
I see.
Right. It's in the law. The law did not say
how to execute.
Yeah.
But you've been working closely with COMELEC over the past few months, and as I mentioned in my introduction, they are organizing Chairman Garcia organizing a summit on elections. I know there have been some activities, discussions, right, on the topic. What are your expectations? What will be the outcome? What do you hope will be discussed?
Well, since October, there have been a series of focus group discussions. So focus group discussions at the day and up to close to the election summit in March would be held, right? Focus group discussions on various topics like security of the election system, what kind of election system we'll have. I facilitated a particular focus group discussion on election standards, which discusses transparency, privacy, accuracy, auditability, all those standards in there. They use their focus group discussions on blockchain, applying blockchain, on our elections. So there's so many topics.
Okay.
The other issues that I'm pushing is, for example, voters' rights. So there should be focus group discussions involving, for example, migrant workers,
mail-in ballots and others.
Yes. Yeah. So those. Now, the expected outcome from this focus group discussions is that the COMELEC is encouraging interested stakeholders, interested parties to come up with their position papers, which can be presented during the election summit.
Okay.
And one of the things, also the crucial thing, is to come up with a set of terms of reference for the next elections. You know,
Okay.
on the technology that we will use, the type of election system that we would like to use. So those are among the outcomes, you know, that is expected to be discussed in the election summit.
Who are involved in these FGDs and then preliminary meetings? And will there be a broader audience at the summit? Will it include also lawmakers, international organizations, or who's going to be in it?
Yeah, it would be a broader audience during the summit.
Okay.
That would include, of course, political parties, candidates, or incumbent officials and incumbent lawmakers. It will be invited to that. There will expected to participate in that election summit, of course, are the other stakeholders like NAMFREL, for example, would be participating in it as well. The academe, for example, will also be there. Right.
All sorts of experts, IT, cybersecurity, and
that's
whatnot,
correct.
yeah.
Election experts should be there as well, right? So to discuss all these issues.
What do you hope to achieve? I mean, is it the draft bill that you will give now to Congress and say, okay, for 2025, this is how we want to do the elections in the Philippines?
Well, among the outcomes, of course, would be proposals, for policy directions which would entail electoral reforms, right? Changes to our existing laws. There is also a move to codify all our election laws. The Omnibus Election Code, that's circa 1985. It's really old.
It's outdated. Yeah.
It's outdated. It had been amended several times with other laws. Like we have the mandatory biometrics registration law, the Fair Election Act, and so many other election-related laws. So there's also a move now to codify this and put it together in one code. Right? So that's another outcome that we hope to come up with. A proposed codified election law for consideration of Congress.
Now, I know there are a number of stakeholders involved even in the FGDs, but if it were up to NAMFREL, how would you do it in 2025? What would be the ideal, right, ideal system in your point of view?
Of course, again, it rests a lot on how transparent the elections is going to be, especially at the voting center level or the polling precinct level.
Okay, but what does that mean? I mean, as you said, transparency has been there, but it's been subject to interpretation, right? But from NAMFREL's point of view, what is ideal? I mean, if transparency is the main concern.
Well, we'd like to see a public counting of the vote.
Okay. All right.
Okay, and that's how we define transparency. It's public counting, the principle of secret voting and public counting, and that's
your number one issue.
Yes.
Okay. All right. What about election violence, intimidation, vote buying? Because I was asking Commissioner Chairman Garcia about this as well, about poll watchers, that there may be some mischief there. Possibly by some candidates, employing far too many poll watchers, but in essence buying their votes, right? Because I've noticed that there seems to be a race among candidates to, I guess, contract as many poll watchers as they can, far more than what the precincts can accommodate anyway.
Yeah. Well, the presence of poll watchers anyway is regulated inside the precinct.
Okay.
That's one. Second, that's where NAMFREL and similar election monitoring organizations are. We do a different role. We're non-partisan, unlike, of course, the poll watchers of the candidates and the political parties. So we try to ensure that the vote of the citizen is protected.
Yeah. Let me put it another way. Our friend Gus Lagman, the former chairperson of NAMFREL, was saying there's really no system that's perfect, right? But I think what he was talking about then was maybe there's a way to get rid of the wholesale cheating, and so that maybe we can just concentrate on the retail kind of things that are, of course, possibly impossible to eradicate, but would be more manageable if we just eliminate the opportunity for wholesale voter fraud. What do you think?
Well, the wholesale, actually that is the dagdag bawas.
Okay.
The dagdag bawas does not happen at the precinct level.
Okay.
It happens in the canvassing level, the ladderized system.
Okay.
So if this is fully automated,
That's it. That's the solution.
that's it, yes. And we'd like to see the law actually just automated, computerized our ladderized system of canvassing.
Okay.
That means it goes through the city or municipality, to the provincial level, to the national level.
So you mean you don't physically transport a memory card?
Yes.
And
What
then
can
to a
happen
transmission
is
center, yeah.
all the transmissions can be done to a central location.
From
and
the
then-
precinct.
From the precinct, and then automate that process of canvassing, so we can come up with canvass results or consolidated aggregated votes at the city level, the provincial level, as well as the national level. So you do away with the ladderized, okay? But what the current system has been effective on is really taking out the dagdag bawas, right? Again, like I said, you can hardly cheat at the retail level. The retail cheating
harder now.
happens outside of the voting process, actually.
Right.
That's at the vote buying outside
Okay.
of the precinct,
Right.
and that has to be addressed.
Okay.
It has been a challenge, really, for COMELEC to address vote buying, right? And it's also very difficult and very hard for our watchers to report instances of vote buying if ever they see one. Because again, of course, the primary concern for our watchers is their own safety and security. If by chance they witness an instance of vote buying, for example, their lives could easily be put in danger. They can be threatened and intimidated and harassed. Not only the watchers, but their families. Right. So it's really a challenge for the commission. It would also be even a bigger challenge today to control vote buying because of the technologies, the fintech technologies that are coming in. You can transfer amounts via using your smartphones, right?
Yeah.
So there's no trail.
Yeah.
Right. So vote buying will continue to be a challenge.
Well, it makes your job easier. Lito, I mean, I'd like to ask you some more questions, but I think people will just have to follow your column at the Manila Times to see what else you're working on. Before we go, would you like to maybe say some final thoughts or give a message to our viewers?
Well, one of the things that we're looking at is also in developing is people participation in all these exercises.
Okay. In the public consultation, yeah.
Not only in a public consultation, but people participation in the electoral exercises. We've been accredited by the Commission to participate and observe the electoral exercises such as plebiscites. So we've been to Ormoc, we've been to Maguindanao, and the latest one was in Baliwag. Okay. Sadly, for example, in the Baliwag plebiscite, it was only 21.7% voter turnout. And to us, that shows the level of participation, people's participation in the electoral exercise, right? Because every election, whether that's a referendum, a plebiscite, or even recall elections, and of course our national elections, it's our opportunity to vote for our leaders. So I hope that our citizens, our voters, do participate in these electoral exercises because we make the decisions for our country, for our own community. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much. So there you go. Exercise your right to vote. I'd like to thank everyone watching this program, those watching live and those watching the replay. I'd like to thank Pastor Polo Kibuloy for making this program possible. This has been Business and Politics. I'll see you next week.